My husband told me to cook for myself after I worked a 14-hour shift, and that was the night I finally understood I wasn't really part of his family. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 32, and until a few weeks ago, I would have told you I had a solid life. Tiring, yes. Complicated sometimes, but solid. The kind of life built on duty, sacrifice, and the quiet belief that if you kept showing up, love would meet you halfway. I was married to Daniel Carter, 29 for 3 years. We'd been together for 5. He had 2 children from his previous relationship, Ethan, 11, and Lily, 8. Their mother had been inconsistent long before I came into the picture, and Daniel was the one who held the center. That was part of what I loved about him. He was devoted, steady, protective. Loving him meant loving the small world built around him, and I stepped into it because I wanted to. Back then, things felt balanced. Daniel was working full-time as a freelance brand consultant with steady clients. We split costs, traded off cooking, stayed up too late in the kitchen, talking over leftovers, and half-finished glasses of wine. It felt like a partnership. Not perfect, but real. After the wedding, Daniel said he wanted to scale back so he could be more present for Ethan and Lily. He said they needed stability, and he wasn't wrong. I told him I could carry more of the financial weight until things settled. I said it with love, not resentment. I work as a field technician for a telecommunications company, which means long hours, emergency call-outs, tower failures, equipment rooms with no airflow, and days that leave your body feeling like it has been wrung out. The pay is good because the job is hard. The day everything shifted started before sunrise. 3 tower failures across the county. Heat by mid-morning. No real meal after noon. Scraped knees, bruised wrists, and the kind of exhaustion that makes even taking your boots off feel like work. By the time I got home, it was after 10:15. My shirt was stuck to my back. My shoulders were throbbing. I hadn't eaten since lunch. Daniel was at the sink rinsing plates. The kids were already in their rooms. The kitchen smelled like tomato sauce and a Finnish family evening. I opened the fridge, expecting leftovers. There was nothing except condiments, eggs, juice boxes, and half a cucumber wrapped in plastic. I stood there for a second, too tired to think clearly, then asked, "Hey, is there any dinner left?" Daniel didn't turn around. He just said flatly, "You're an adult. Cook for yourself." I thought I'd misheard him. "What?" That was when he turned. Not guilty, not apologetic, annoyed. "I made dinner for the kids at 6. You weren't here. I'm not running a restaurant where people can just show up whenever they want and expect food waiting." I tried to explain. "I've been at work since 6 this morning. We had emergency calls. I couldn't leave." He shrugged. "That's your choice. The kids and I have our routine." "My choice?" I said. His face barely changed. "You chose that job. You chose to stay late. Don't expect me to rearrange the whole evening because you can't manage your schedule." I could have said 100 things then. That the mortgage came out of my account. That the utilities, car payment, groceries, school supplies, soccer fees, and every invisible cushion under that household were funded by those hours he called my choice. That loving a family should count for more than being useful to it. But I was too tired to argue for basic dignity in my own kitchen. So I made myself a peanut butter sandwich. Daniel dried his hands and walked past me without touching my shoulder, without asking about my day, without even pretending to feel bad. He just said he was going upstairs because he had to get Lily to school in the morning. And what hurt most wasn't even the sentence. It was the look. That mild, irritated distance. Like I was inconvenient. Like I had arrived at the wrong time in a house I paid to keep running. I ate standing at the counter while the kitchen still looked like a family had just finished dinner. I just wasn't in the picture. That thought should have been dramatic. It wasn't. It felt familiar. It connected itself to a dozen smaller moments I'd been brushing aside for months. Weekend plans made around me instead of with me. Dinners where I sat smiling at the edge of conversations that already had their center. The week Daniel's mother visited and treated me like a polite guest, admiring family photos instead of the woman helping hold that home together. One night she was showing old pictures of Daniel as a child. Lily was laughing. Ethan kept pointing out how much she looked like him. Then his mother smiled at me and said, "You can really see the family resemblance, can't you, Claire?" I laughed it off at the time. Told myself I was tired, sensitive, reading too much into harmless things. But the truth was simpler. I had been swallowing my own hurt for a long time. I loved Ethan and Lily. That was never the problem. Ethan asked me for help with math because he said I explained things better. Lily liked to curl up beside me while she drew and narrate every detail of whatever world she was inventing. I never resented them. What I couldn't ignore anymore was the role I seemed to occupy in that house. Dependable, useful, easy to lean on, easy to forget. Daniel wasn't cruel in obvious ways. He didn't yell. He didn't insult me. He didn't control where I went or who I saw. What he did was quieter. He made my loneliness sound irrational. He turned my needs into overreactions. He let me carry more and more, then acted as though naming that imbalance was the real problem. A year earlier, I had brought up counseling over coffee on a Sunday morning. I said I'd been feeling disconnected and thought it might help us talk before the distance got worse. Daniel had laughed softly and said, "We don't need counseling. You're creating problems that don't exist." I let that go too. That night, after the sandwich, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, hearing his voice over and over again. "You're an adult. Cook for yourself." It wasn't about dinner, it was about position. His kids were his family. Their routine mattered. Their evenings mattered. And me? I was the woman financing the structure around that life and arriving too late to belong inside it. The next morning, I didn't confront him. I adjusted. If I was an adult who needed to take care of herself, fine. I would, completely, quietly, without asking, without filling the gaps he had come to expect me to fill. Monday, I stopped at the grocery store on my way home and bought food just for me. Steak, fresh pasta, good bread, the kind of things I usually skipped because they felt wasteful when I was thinking like a household manager instead of a person. When I got home, Daniel was making boxed mac and cheese while Lily colored at the counter and Ethan scrolled on his tablet. No one asked where I'd been. No one asked if I'd eaten. I unpacked my groceries, cooked my steak, plated one serving, and walked past them with it. Daniel looked confused, like some pattern had broken, and he didn't know how to name it. He said nothing. Tuesday, I made breakfast for one. When Daniel came downstairs and saw me eating eggs, toast, and bacon, he looked at the stove, then at me, and asked, "Did you not make enough?" I met his eyes and said, "You're an adult. Cook for yourself." The words landed cleanly. I watched the surprise move across his face, then the irritation behind it. He didn't argue. He grabbed a yogurt and went back upstairs. Wednesday, he mentioned he was taking Ethan and Lily to a movie that evening. He said it casually, like it had already been decided, because it had. There was a time I would have tried to ease myself into that plan. Suggested making it a family night. Asked about tickets. Tried not to sound like I was asking to be included. This time I just said, "Sounds fun." That night, instead of waiting at home, I grabbed dinner and drinks with a coworker I hadn't seen outside work in months. We talked about equipment failures, supervisors, life, easy things, human things. When I got home, Daniel was in the living room. "Where were you?" he asked. There was an edge to it, not concern, expectation. I went out. "With who?" "A coworker from work." He sat up straighter. "You didn't think to ask if we wanted to do something together tonight?" I almost laughed. "You already had plans. You didn't ask me." "That's different." "How?" He had no answer. He just frowned and said, "You're being weird this week." I didn't argue. I went upstairs. Thursday, Ethan was at the kitchen table struggling with fractions. My instinct was to sit down beside him immediately. Usually I would have. But Daniel was right there at the counter with his laptop open. "Ask your dad," I said gently. Ethan blinked. "But you explain it better." "He can help you." Daniel looked up sharply. "I'm working." "So was I all day," I said. The room went still. Ethan looked between us, confused. Daniel sighed, came over, and sat beside his son with a tight expression. I stepped back, not out of spite, but out of clarity. Friday was the crack that made the whole thing visible. I got home early for once. Daniel was making spaghetti. He saw me come in, paused, then went back to stirring the sauce without saying hello, without saying there was enough for me, without saying anything at all. So I took out bread and cheese and made myself a grilled sandwich. Ethan walked in and looked from the stove to my plate. "Why aren't you eating with us?" Before I could answer, Daniel snapped. "What's wrong with you this week?" I turned to him calmly. "I'm taking care of myself, just like you told me to." "That's not what I meant," he said quickly. "You're being ridiculous." "Then explain it." He opened his mouth, closed it, shook his head. "You're making this into something it's not." "I asked for dinner," I said. "You made it clear that expecting basic consideration was unreasonable." "That was one night." "It wasn't." He had no response to that, because we both knew I wasn't talking about leftovers anymore. That night, lying in bed, I stopped asking myself whether I was overreacting. I started asking a harder question. If this was my marriage, what exactly was I still trying to save? I didn't go to a lawyer right away. First, I paid attention. Saturday morning, I sat at the kitchen table with our joint account open on my laptop and went back 3 months. At first, it looked normal. Groceries, utilities, school expenses, subscriptions. Then I noticed the pattern. Clothes, entertainment, a hair appointment for Daniel, expensive shoes for Ethan, art supplies for Lily, a dinner out Daniel hadn't mentioned. By the time I added it all up, it was over $1,200. The number itself didn't bother me. I could afford it. What bothered me was what I didn't see. Anything for me. Not because I needed nothing, because I had stopped expecting consideration. 2 weeks earlier, I had mentioned needing new work boots. Mine were worn down from months of climbing and kneeling and moving across rough surfaces. Daniel had barely looked up when I said it. "That's a work expense, right? Your company should cover that." "They give us a yearly allowance. I already used it on safety equipment." He shrugged. "You'll figure it out." That was the whole conversation. Sitting at the table with those numbers in front of me, I finally saw it clearly. Supporting the family had never been the issue. Being reduced to support was. Later that afternoon, Daniel's mother called. He put her on speaker while making lunch for the kids. They talked about school schedules, a birthday party, something Lily wanted to wear, something Ethan had said that made them laugh. I waited for a pause and stepped into the room. "Hey, how are you?" "Oh, hi, Claire. I'm good. How's work?" "Busy, same as always." "That's good," she said. And then the conversation flowed right back around me. I stepped out of the room a few seconds later. That night, Daniel made dinner for himself and the kids. No one asked if I wanted any. I heated up something I had bought for myself and ate it at the counter. It felt normal. That was the worst part. Sunday evening, I scrolled through my phone, avoiding my own thoughts, then finally called a divorce attorney someone at work had recommended months earlier. His office was quiet and deliberate. He asked precise questions. I gave him the structure, not the full emotional weight of it. Married 3 years. No shared children. Primary financial provider. House purchased before marriage in my name. When I finished, he leaned back and said, "From a legal standpoint, your situation is relatively straightforward." The word hit harder than it should have. Straightforward. As if a marriage could be reduced to a clean exit strategy. He told me that because Daniel worked, even part-time, long-term financial obligations would likely be limited. The house being mine before the marriage put me in a strong position. Daniel might have some claim, tied to improvements made during the marriage, but not half. "I'm not sure I want a divorce," I said. "That's fine," he replied. "You don't have to decide today, but you should understand your options before you try to fix something that may not be fixable." On the drive home, I turned off the radio. May not be fixable. I didn't know if that was true yet, but for the first time, I let myself consider it. When I walked into the house, Daniel was on the couch with his laptop open and the kids nearby. Everything looked normal, functional, stable. That was the problem. Nothing looked broken from the outside. He looked up and asked, "You okay?" Not because he had finally noticed something had been wrong for months, because whatever had shifted in me had become noticeable to him. "Yeah," I said. "I'm fine." That night, staring at the ceiling again, I asked myself one simple question. If nothing changed, could I live like this for another year, 5, 10? I didn't have the answer yet, so I gave the marriage one last chance. Wednesday night, after the kids were asleep, I stood in the living room and said, "Can we talk?" Daniel muted the TV. I sat across from him, not next to him. "I've been feeling like an outsider in my own home," I said. He frowned. What do you mean? I kept my voice steady. I feel like I'm only part of this family when something needs to be paid for or handled, not when it comes to decisions, time, or basic consideration. His expression tightened immediately. That's not true. I'm talking about a pattern, Daniel. The dinner, the plans made without me, the way I come home and feel like I'm stepping into a life that doesn't include me unless I force my way in. He exhaled hard. Claire, this is just how families work. I felt something in me go cold. Families work by treating one person like they don't belong? You're twisting it. I'm taking care of the kids, managing the house. Not everything is about you. I'm not asking for everything to be about me, I said. I'm asking to matter. You do matter. How? That stopped him. I work, I take care of the house, I handle everything with Ethan and Lily. That's what you do. It's not how you treat me. His jaw tightened. You act like I'm some villain because I didn't save you dinner one night. It wasn't one night. You keep saying that, but you won't admit you're overreacting. I leaned forward slightly. I'm not asking you to take care of me like I can't function. I'm asking for the same level of consideration I give you. He laughed once, short and irritated. So now I'm not doing enough? I'm saying I feel valued for what I provide, not for who I am. He rolled his eyes, actually rolled them. You're being overly sensitive. This is what I mean. You create problems that don't exist. There it was, the same dismissal as before, just louder. I tried once more. I brought up counseling. You shut it down. I tried to tell you I felt disconnected. You said I was imagining things. Because you were. You still are. I stared at him, and something settled permanently. Okay, I said. He blinked. Okay? I need you to answer something honestly. He leaned back. Wary now? What? If I lost my job tomorrow and couldn't work for 6 months, would you still want to be married to me? The question hung between us. He didn't answer. Instead, I watched the discomfort move across his face. Calculation, delay, evasion. How is that even relevant? That's not an answer. It's a hypothetical. It matters. Answer it. Silence. Long enough. He never said no. He never said yes either. And that was answer enough. I nodded. Okay. Claire, you're trying to trap me with gotcha questions. That's not how relationships work. No, I said softly. It's not. The conversation dragged after that, but it was already over. He said I was dramatic, unfair, impossible to satisfy. I said I didn't feel loved in any way that mattered. He said, I'm here, aren't I? I looked at him and said, like furniture. By the time it ended, he was frustrated. I was clear. I filed for divorce that Friday. He was served Monday morning while I was out on a tower call. My phone buzzed nonstop until I climbed down. 6 missed calls, then messages. What did you do? Are you serious right now? Claire, answer your phone. I called him back. What the hell is this? He demanded the second he answered. You had me served at the house? What are you doing? I filed. I can see that. Why? Over what? Dinner? Reduction. Minimization. The same move every time. It's not about dinner. Then what is it about? Because from where I'm standing, you're blowing up our entire life over something petty. Our entire life, I repeated, or your version of it. He snapped that I was twisting everything, that I never said I was thinking about divorce, that I was selfish, cruel, walking out on him and the kids. I said the only thing that mattered. I tried to talk to you, for months. I shouldn't have had to threaten divorce just to be treated like your wife. When I got home that evening, the house felt heavier. Daniel was in the living room alone. The kids were at his sister's. He looked wrecked, but not in a theatrical way, more like a man whose reality had shifted faster than he could process. How could you do this? He asked. I talked to you. You didn't listen. I didn't know it was this serious. That's the problem. He paced once, turned back. Things weren't that bad. You're acting like I've been abusing you. I never said that. Then why this? Because I'm not your wife in this house, I said. I'm your financial backer. He stared at me, offended. That's not true. Then tell me what I am. He couldn't. Then he tried the line I think he believed would save us. I love you. You know that, right? I held his gaze. Do I? That hit him harder than anything else I said. Of course you do. I just don't always show it. This isn't about style, I said. It's about absence. He stepped closer, suddenly urgent. Okay, then I'll fix it. I'll make dinner. I'll include you more. We'll do things together. I'll do whatever you need. Just don't do this. For the first time, I saw the truth underneath it. Not love, fear. You shouldn't have to force yourself to include your wife in your life, I said. I'm not forcing it. You are, because if you actually wanted to, you would have been doing it already. That's not fair. It is. He paced again, then stopped, turned back to me with desperation written all over his face. Is there anything I can do? 6 months earlier, that question would have broken me open. Now, it just sounded late. The time for that was before, I said, when I was still asking. He insisted he could change. I told him I believed him. That was what hurt. I did believe he could change. I just didn't believe he would have if I hadn't forced consequences into the room. That night, I moved into the guest room. A few days later, I found a small, month-to-month apartment near work. Temporary, but peaceful. The hardest moment wasn't with Daniel. It was with Lily. She knocked on the guest room door, looked up at me with wide, uncertain eyes, and asked, "Are you mad at us?" I crouched down immediately. No, not at all. Then why are you leaving? Because there are truths you can't hand to a child whole, I said. Sometimes grown-ups have problems they need to fix. It has nothing to do with you or Ethan, I promise. She searched my face, then asked, "Are you still going to help me with my science project?" My throat tightened. Of course, always. By the end of the week, I had packed what mattered. Clothes, work gear, a few things that still felt like mine. Daniel watched from the doorway at one point and said nothing. Because somewhere underneath the panic, he knew this wasn't a reaction anymore. It was a decision. The legal side moved faster than I expected. No screaming courtroom scenes, just paperwork, meetings, signatures, and the quiet dismantling of a marriage. Daniel initially asked for half the house. His lawyer shut that down. The house had been mine before the marriage. In the end, he received a fair amount tied to improvements made during our time together, about $15,000. He kept his car and his work equipment. I kept the house, but I didn't move back in. I had no interest in returning to a place where I had learned how to disappear. Daniel moved in with his sister for a while. The kids could stay in the same school district. Their routines stayed mostly intact. And then, once he realized the divorce was real, he became the man I had been asking for all along. Attentive, present, careful. He asked about my day and actually waited for the answer. He cooked. One evening, when I stopped by to pick up a few things, he had my favorite meal ready. 6 months earlier, that gesture would have meant everything. Now, all I could see was timing. You seem different, he said. I am. I can change, he said quietly. I already am. I believed him, but belief wasn't enough anymore. I know, I said, but you didn't want to before. A few days later, he asked, Does any of this matter, the way I'm trying now? It matters, I said. Just not in the way you want it to. He frowned. What does that mean? It means you were always capable of this. You just didn't think you needed to be. He didn't argue. Our last real conversation happened outside my apartment after he dropped Lily off for a science project. No shouting, no drama, just honesty. I didn't realize, he said. I thought you knew I loved you. How would I know that? He had no answer. Then he said the truest thing he'd said in years. I took you for granted. I looked at him and said, I don't think you're a bad person. I think you got comfortable in a dynamic that worked for you and never stopped to ask what it was costing me. He swallowed hard. Do you think I could have fixed it? I thought about all the conversations I had tried to start, all the chances that had looked small at the time and final in hindsight. Yes, I said. His shoulders dropped slightly. Then I finished the sentence. But not when you did. That was the end of it. Not explosive, not dramatic, just complete. Life afterward didn't transform overnight. It shifted. I stayed in my apartment. It was smaller than the house, but it felt like mine in a way that mattered. I cooked dinner because I wanted to, not because anyone expected it. I invited people over without tension. I watched whatever I wanted. I stopped measuring my needs against someone else's convenience. Ethan came over one weekend, and we built a volcano model on my kitchen counter. Baking soda, vinegar, too much red food coloring. At one point, he looked up and asked, "Are you happier now?" I answered honestly, "Yeah, I am." Lily came over a few days later to work on a planets project. She talked nonstop about which planet she would visit if she could choose. "Not Mars," she said seriously. "Too dusty." I smiled. Fair. When Daniel came to pick her up, he looked around my apartment, then back at me. "You seem lighter." "I feel lighter." And that was the truth. I'm not dating yet, but I'm not closing the door forever either. I learned something I won't ignore next time. Love is not what people claim in the moment they're about to lose you. It's what they make you feel before that moment ever arrives. Daniel and I are civil now, connected through the kids. Nothing more. A week ago, he asked me one last question. "Do you think I'm a bad person?" I shook my head. No. Then what happened? I looked at him for a second and gave him the only honest answer I had. "You got comfortable," I said, and I disappeared. That night, back in my apartment, I made dinner for myself, sat by the window, and ate in silence. This time, it didn't feel lonely. It felt peaceful.